Jessica, the daughter-in-law, clutched the eviction notice like it might catch fire. Eric, her husband Evelyn's only son, stood frozen behind her lips, parted, but silent. "You can't sell the house out from under us," Jessica cried. Evelyn, once banished to the guest house behind her own home, didn't blink. "I didn't sell your house," she said calmly. "I sold mine." And in that moment, mother widow and forgotten landlord took back everything without ever raising her voice. He said, "Mom, please knock before coming in, like I didn't raise him inside these walls." The words landed with more weight than the morning sun pouring in through the kitchen window. "Mom, please knock next time. It's better that way." Evelyn paused mid-step, one hand still on the pantry door she'd instinctively opened as she'd done for years. Her fingers hovered over the familiar brass handle, cool to the touch, the same one she'd wiped down countless times when Eric was little and left peanut butter on everything. She blinked, unsure if she'd heard him right, but Eric didn't even look at her when he said it. He was busy rinsing blueberries for the brunch spread. Jessica stood nearby, humming softly, arranging plates that matched the eucalyptus-themed napkins she insisted were holiday neutral. "It's just a boundary thing," Jessica added breezily. "The guest house is so cozy for you anyway." Evelyn smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Her gaze fell to the floor where the kitchen tile changed white marble inside a short wooden step down into the mudroom. She had helped choose that tile 20 years ago, back when she and Mark had first bought the place, back when it was just one house, not theirs and hers. Later that morning, during brunch on the patio, Jessica raised her glass of orange mimosa and announced brightly, "This is my mother-in-law, Evelyn. She lives in our back unit for independence." "Isn't that cute?" A round of polite laughs followed. Evelyn chuckled too, her teeth barely brushing together. Across the table, a younger guest looked over and said, "Oh, that's awesome, kind of like a built-in grandma suite." "Exactly," Jessica beamed. "We're all about modern family design." Evelyn said nothing. She focused on cutting her quiche. It crumbled beneath her fork. The sun was warm on her shoulders, but something in her chest felt cold, like a locked door she'd never asked to walk through. That night in the small kitchenette of the guest house, Evelyn rinsed a single teacup. The walls were quiet, too quiet. Her fingers trembled not from age but from memory. She dried the cup slowly, then walked to the back cabinet, the one beneath the tiny microwave where she'd tucked away the fireproof lockbox years ago, back when Mark was still alive. She pulled it out, placed it on the table. The key was on a string tied to her sewing scissors. The click of the lock was soft but final. She flipped through the neatly labeled file's Insurance Medical One worn envelope, faded at the edges, marked Property Deed 2003 Wisteria Lane. She pulled it out. Her hands didn't shake this time. The document inside was crisp. Her name, Evelyn Marie Thompson. No cosigner, no secondary owner, no amendment. Mark had told her to keep it that way. "You don't know what the future holds, Evie, but you've got to hold the title always." At the time, she'd thought it was paranoia. Now she knew it was prophecy. She sat there for a long time. Outside, the lights of the main house flickered off one by one. Through the window, she could see Jessica moving past the bedroom curtains, silhouetted in candlelight, laughing into her phone, probably telling someone how cute it was that her mother-in-law had her own little space. Evelyn placed the deed flat on the table. She stared at her own name, black ink on white paper, undisputed, unchanged, not a guest, not a tenant, not a forgotten fixture behind the kitchen. Evelyn smoothed the edges of the paper rose from the table and slid it back into the envelope. As she tucked it into the lockbox, her voice was barely audible but sharp as glass. "Let's see who really owns this story." They labeled my towels. I remembered signing for the plumbing they now use. The towels were folded neatly on the shelf above the shared washer, white plush and embroidered with a single navy blue letter, E, not Evelyn, not Mom, just E like a placeholder. She stared at them for a moment longer than necessary. The initials weren't decorative, they were designations. Next to hers were two other stacks, one labeled J and one Eric, separate shelves, separate initials. Jessica appeared in the doorway of the laundry area with her usual polished tone, like every word was part of a podcast intro. "Oh, I hope you don't mind. I just thought it would be more hygienic, since we all have different preferences." "Hygienic," Evelyn echoed softly. "Yeah, Jessica smiled, folding a dish towel as if it were a delicate sheet of origami, and it just helps avoid mix-ups, makes everyone feel respected. Respect? Evelyn nodded, though something inside her shifted like drywall cracking beneath paint. Later that day, Evelyn returned to her guest house to find a glossy brochure tucked under a grocery receipt on her counter. Pale lavender and soft teal font, Harmony Pines, a luxury assisted living experience. She picked it up carefully like it might burn. The paper was thick, the kind that screams expensive even before you read a word. There were sticky notes attached. One had a scribble in Jessica's unmistakable handwriting, "Just something I saw in the mail, no pressure." Another said, "Planning ahead is self-care." Evelyn stared at the pamphlet a long time, then at the trash can, then very calmly folded the paper, opened her silverware drawer, and placed it underneath the forks. That night, during a brief moment in the backyard when Eric stopped by to check in, he stood awkwardly near the garden hose, hands shoved in his sweatshirt pockets. "We should talk soon," he said, "about, future care stuff." Evelyn tilted her head. "Future care? Just in case, you're still sharp, obviously." He laughed nervously. "But it's good to be prepared, like if you ever want to simplify things." "Simplify," she repeated. "I mean, it's just a big property for someone on their own." Evelyn's gaze drifted past him toward the two-story home with the fire pit she paid to have installed where Jessica now hosted wine nights. "You're right," she said softly. "It is a lot to carry alone." Eric looked relieved. "Exactly. Just something to think about." She smiled at him, then the kind of smile she hadn't used in years, the kind her husband once called her velvet knife. That evening, after Eric left, she sat at her small desk and opened her old laptop. The county assessor's office website loaded slowly. She typed in the parcel number from memory. Owner of record, Evelyn Marie Thompson. Liens, none. Assessed value up 117% from purchase date. She stared at the valuation. The market had exploded. Her house was now worth more than double what she and Mark paid 20 years ago. Jessica wanted her to downsize, but maybe they were the ones taking up too much space. She clicked through to download the property summary. The PDF opened with a single page and her name in bold at the top, Evelyn Marie Thompson, sole title holder. Just 3 words below it, no secondary owners. She picked up the phone, the kind with the coiled cord she refused to replace. A familiar number rang. A man answered on the 3rd ring. "Gayson and Wolflaw," he said. Evelyn's voice was steady. "Hi, Martin. It's Evelyn Thompson. Hypothetically speaking, if I wanted to sell a house that someone else was living in," she smiled, and for the first time in weeks it reached her eyes, "how would that work? My grandmother's chair ended up in their sunroom. They didn't even ask." The light in the hallway was dim when Evelyn stepped into the main house that morning. She'd been invited, at least technically. Jessica had texted, "If you're up early, we're reorganizing the sunroom. Would love your opinion." What she found wasn't a question. It was a statement. There, beside the bright, paneled windows and beneath one of Jessica's newly purchased succulents, sat her grandmother's antique rocking chair, walnut frame, velvet cushion, the carved initials still faintly visible on the underside of the left armrest, EMR for Eleanor May Rosenthal. It had sat in Evelyn's guest house for the last decade untouched except for dustings and memories. Now it sat in the corner of a decorative Instagram-ready tableau throw pillows added to match the coastal modern aesthetic Jessica had been obsessed with lately. "Oh, there you are." Jessica appeared from behind a folding screen, her phone still in hand. "Isn't it stunning in here now?" Evelyn didn't answer. Her eyes stayed on the chair. "I hope it's okay," Jessica continued. "The chair just looked so nostalgic. It brings the whole room together, don't you think?" Evelyn opened her mouth, closed it, smiled faintly. "Of course," she said, "if it fits your style." But inside something cracked. Not shattered, just split a small, clean fracture. That evening, Evelyn sat in the guest house and opened a photo album that still smelled faintly of cinnamon and old glue. Her fingers paused on a picture of her grandmother in that same chair knitting a sweater for baby Eric. Her husband Mark's handwriting was scribbled in the margin. "She rocked him to sleep every afternoon. Lucky boy." She swallowed the tightness in her throat. Lucky boy. It wasn't the first thing they'd taken without asking. Years ago, she'd sold her wedding bangles, genuine gold passed down from her own mother, to help Eric launch that landscaping business he promised would become the next eco-home wave. It barely lasted 18 months. She never asked for repayment, only respect. Now her chair sat under a potted vine and LED fairy lights as if it had always belonged there. 3 nights later, Evelyn saw it by accident, a video on Jessica's TikTok. Bright music fast cuts captions like modern family home vibes and DIY sunroom makeover. The chair was featured in 3 different shots. One of Jessica's followers commented, "Where did you get that vintage chair obsessed?" Jessica replied, "Family heirloom. It found its way to us." Evelyn read the words twice, then once more. Later that night, she called her old friend Martha, the only person who still called her E. "You saw it?" Evelyn asked, her voice low. "I did," Martha said bluntly. "You're not even in the story, Ev. It's like you're a ghost in your own house." Evelyn didn't respond. "What are you going to do?" Evelyn looked down at the file folder she had pulled from the lockbox earlier that evening, the one labeled Title, Deed, Mark's Notes. But beside it now sat a blank document she had just printed. It read, "Formation of Limited Liability Company Applicant, Evelyn Rosenthal." Her maiden name, the one she stopped using when she became just Eric's mom. She hung up the call and opened her laptop. Bank account, new trust account, LLC filing portal, all in progress. She opened the deed PDF, uploaded it, and began filling in the transfer details quietly, legally. Jessica had taken a chair. Evelyn was reclaiming the floor beneath it. An hour later, she received a confirmation email. "Rosenthal Trust, LLC has been successfully created." She sat back in her chair now back in the guest house, and whispered, "Let's see how modern this family really is." They said the code got reset. I saw a lock where there used to be a welcome mat. The keypad blinked red. Evelyn stood outside the side door of the main house, balancing a small basket of clean laundry dish towels she'd folded, after noticing the ones in Jessica's kitchen were stained a habit, something she'd always done without being asked. She entered the 4-digit code she'd known for years. Red light. Tried again. Red light. Once more carefully. Denied. The beep was sharper, this time final. She stared at the glowing screen, then knocked lightly at first, then louder. No answer. She shifted the basket on her hip, listening. Laughter floated from the back patio. Jessica's voice, bright and performative, echoed into the yard. Evelyn set the towels down on a patio chair and walked quietly back to the guest house. The silence trailing her felt heavier than usual. Later that evening, she asked Eric, casually over the phone. "Oh yeah," he said. "We had to reset everything. Security update, new smart system. Jessica was getting alerts about weird logins." Evelyn kept her voice even. "I see. But it's no big deal," he added. "Just knock next time, okay?" She smiled into the phone, though he couldn't see it. "Of course," she said. "It's your home." Then she hung up and looked at the framed deed still sitting beside her desk. "Is it, though?" That night, she retrieved the small audio recorder from the top drawer of her file cabinet. "I just think she's, slipping." Another voice, possibly a friend or her sister, mumbled something unintelligible. "No, seriously," Jessica continued. "She's not all there. She walked in the other day like she forgot the code changed. I'm worried she'll wander off one day, and Eric's too soft to see it." Soft laughter followed, muffled. "I mean, there's got to be a conversation at some point about options." Evelyn hit pause. She didn't cry, not right away. She closed her eyes, leaned back in her chair, and listened to the faint hum of the fridge, the birds outside her own breath, steady and deep. Then she opened her eyes and whispered, "Options." By the time the sun dipped behind the oak tree out front, she had her laptop open and the county tax records displayed. She clicked through the payment history every year, her name, her checks. Jessica and Eric hadn't contributed a dime. She still paid every cent of property tax on the parcel where both their dreams and their door locks stood. Noted. The next morning, Evelyn picked up the phone and dialed a number written on a card she kept taped behind her mirror. "Thompson Realty," the voice said. "This is Armin." "I need a discreet agent," Evelyn said. "If this story made you feel something, comment 1. If not, comment 0. "Okay, what are you selling?" "My home," she said plainly. "Great." What kind of timeline are you hoping for? No rush, but no sign, no flyers, no online blast. Another pause. Off market. Yes, understood. Do you want to meet to discuss listing details? Evelyn glanced toward the main house where Jessica's laughter had once again begun to trickle through the glass. Not here. I'll come to you. That night, Evelyn folded the clean towels again this time, neatly placing them in a box marked donation. She slid the box under her bed. Outside, the keypad blinked silently in the dark, but inside her guest house, the wheels had already started turning and no one had changed that code. They went away for a wine weekend. I opened their home to strangers with contracts. It was the scent that hit Evelyn first lavender linen spray, a brand Jessica always overused, misting it across pillows and curtains before guests arrived. But this time, the scent belonged to her plan. The moment their SUV backed out of the driveway, bags packed, Bluetooth speaker bouncing with road trip tunes, Evelyn stepped out of the guest house and walked slowly, confidently toward the main house. A folder was tucked under her arm gloves in her pocket. The front door was unlocked. She still had the keys, not that they remembered. Inside, sunlight filtered across the kitchen counters as if it were any normal Saturday. But this wasn't a normal day. This was the showing. 2 soft knocks came at the door precisely at noon. Evelyn answered it with a calmness that surprised even her. "Hi," said a woman in a gray blazer and boots too expensive for a cold January day. "Armin's assistant. You must be Mrs. Rosenthal." Evelyn nodded, using her maiden name as planned. "Please come in." Behind the agent were 2 couples, mid-30s, clean shoes, quiet excitement. They looked around with practiced interest, eyes scanning square footage, window placement, tile condition. Evelyn moved through the house like a shadow, quietly packing away any object that could connect the home to Eric or Jessica family photos, monogrammed mugs, the obnoxious "Live Laugh Love" sign Jessica had nailed above the breakfast nook. She boxed it all in minutes and slid the container into the laundry room closet, out of sight, out of story. One of the women from the couple paused at the staircase. "So this is vacant." Evelyn nodded, standing beside the fireplace like she'd never left. "It's under LLC ownership now. Occupancy ends soon. Turnkey ready." "Nice bones," the man added. "Kitchen's a little dated, but it has character." The assistant chimed in, "Property comes with clean title, no liens, and it's rare for something this central to stay off market this long." Evelyn stayed silent, watching, listening, and for the first time in years, she was the one being heard. At the end of the walkthrough, one couple lingered. The taller of the 2 extended a hand. "We'll offer 15 over asking," he said. "No contingencies. We can wire by Tuesday." Evelyn didn't flinch. "I'll have my lawyer review everything." She walked them to the door and shook their hands one by one, the way Mark used to after a solid business deal. Outside, a neighbor, Mrs. Connolly from across the street, stood with her arms crossed, garden shears in hand. She raised an eyebrow as the buyers drove away. "You selling?" she asked. "I thought your son owned this place." Evelyn smiled. The wind tugged gently at her collar. "Never gave it away," she said. That evening, back in the guest house, she peeled off her gloves and placed the signed intent to purchase forms into her folder. Before she went to bed, she walked once more into the main house and stood in the master bedroom. She reached down and rolled up the cream rug Jessica had imported from Italy, gifted from her parents, as she often reminded guests. Evelyn wrapped it carefully in plastic and slid it under the guest house bed. No one would notice until it was too late. She turned off the lights, locked the door behind her, and stepped back into the dark, cold grass, feeling taller somehow. The next afternoon, Jessica returned from her trip, sunglasses still on suitcase dragging behind her. She stepped into the bedroom and froze. "Eric," she called. "Did you move something?" Eric was still outside, unloading wine from the trunk. Jessica's eyes scanned the room. A beat passed. "Where the hell is the rug?" Then louder, tighter. "Why does this feel empty?" They talked about remodels. I finalized escrow. The morning Eric showed Evelyn his Pinterest board of modern kitchen inspo, she nodded slowly and stirred her tea. "We were thinking subway tile with a waterfall island," he said, swiping through saved photos on his phone. "It'll really elevate the space, make it more marketable down the line." Jessica chimed in from across the room, holding her latte like a trophy. "We're investing in the future. It's about creating generational wealth, right?" Evelyn smiled into her cup. The steam warmed her face, but her hands stayed cold. Generational wealth, she repeated softly. If only they knew what she'd been finalizing that very morning. Back in her guest house, the printer hummed quietly on her desk. 2 documents slid out: a finalized purchase and sale agreement and an accompanying notice to vacate. Her lawyer, Martin Wolf, had moved fast. The buyers had wired their earnest money. Escrow would close in 21 days. Evelyn sat with the paperwork, reviewing every clause, every comma. Martin had been precise. She was well within her legal rights. Eric and Jessica were not tenants. They were residents, informal, undocumented, and had no lease agreement. But out of courtesy and formality, Martin included a 30-day notice to vacate. And then there was the leverage. She opened the manila folder marked Lien Documents 2011. Flashback. It had been a bitter winter when Eric came to her and Mark with the business loan story. His landscape company had overextended again. He begged for help. Mark agreed on one condition: they file a lien on the house until he repaid the amount. Eric signed without hesitation. "I'm your son," he had said at the time. "I'd never screw you over." Mark had kept the papers, and after his death, Evelyn had locked them away. Now she retrieved them, still notarized, still binding. Eric may have forgotten. Jessica likely never even knew, but the house remembered. That afternoon, Evelyn prepared the envelope. She placed the notice to vacate, the escrow confirmation, and a copy of the lien agreement inside a crisp folder. On the cover, she typed one line in bold font: "For your review. Urgent." She sealed it, addressed it, and walked the half-mile to the post office herself. She didn't trust couriers anymore, not with this. "Certified?" the clerk asked. Evelyn looked him in the eye. "And tracked." The envelope slid across the counter and disappeared behind the divider. Evelyn exhaled, slow and controlled. The deed was done again. The next morning, Evelyn watched from the guest house window as Jessica opened the mailbox in her oversized robe, balancing her phone and smoothie in the same hand. She pulled out the envelope and studied the label. Her smile faltered. She stepped back inside without checking the rest of the mail. Evelyn waited. 10 minutes passed, then 20. Finally, the front door slammed. Jessica stood barefoot on the patio, folder in one hand, the other gripping her phone. She shouted something Evelyn couldn't hear. Her face was red, eyes wide, a panic that didn't come from confusion, but from clarity. Inside that folder was a cold, quiet truth: you were never the owner. You were only ever the guest. That evening, Evelyn opened her email. Martin had forwarded her the delivery confirmation from USPS, then added a single line beneath it: "They've officially been served. Clock starts now." She leaned back in her chair, sipping the last of her tea as the wind rattled the windows of the guest house. 30 days and counting. They asked, "Why now?" I said, "Because you already moved me out." Eric stood in the middle of the living room like someone had pulled the floor out from under him. His voice was half shout, half whisper. "You're actually kicking us out. You can't be serious." Evelyn stood across from him, hands folded neatly in front of her. The sunlight from the bay window cut across the hardwood floor between them, bright, unforgiving, like truth often is. "I'm very serious," she said softly, "and I'm not kicking you out. I'm just reclaiming what was never yours." Jessica stormed in from the kitchen, waving the notice like it was a fire about to consume the drapes. "You can't do this. This house is our life, our memories. Eric grew up here, for God's sake." "I know," Evelyn said, her voice level. "I was there every minute of it." Eric's voice cracked. "You told me this was our future, that we could build a family here." "You built it on assumption," Evelyn replied, "not ownership." Jessica threw the folder down onto the coffee table with a loud slap. "This isn't legal. You think we'll just walk away? We'll fight this. We'll find a lawyer." Evelyn didn't flinch. She reached into her purse, pulled out a small notepad, and tore off a sheet. "A list of names. I've already spoken to 3 real estate, family law, and asset protection. If you'd like to add yours to the group chat, let me know." The room fell still. The only sound was the slow tick of the kitchen clock and the low buzz of Jessica's phone on the counter. Eric sank into the armchair, the same chair Evelyn once nursed him in when he had chicken pox. "I just don't understand," he whispered. Evelyn looked at her son, the man who once cried when his hamster died, who once begged her to stay up an extra hour so he could watch thunderstorms from the front porch. "I do," she said. "I understand perfectly." Then she turned and walked out. Back in her guest house, Evelyn locked the door and sat on the edge of her bed. Her hands trembled as she reached for the old box she hadn't opened in years. Tucked inside were cassette tapes from when Eric was little old, home videos, birthday cards, and a phone, her old flip phone long disconnected but still capable of playing voicemails. She powered it up. A few clicks, a chime. "Hey, Mom, it's me. Just wanted to say thank you again for helping with the down payment. I swear I'm going to pay you back. I owe you everything. Love you." The sound of his voice as a younger man, kinder earnest, filled the small space like a ghost walking through a room. Evelyn closed her eyes. A tear slipped down her cheek, not from regret, from release. Just as she began to drift into silence, her current phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Connolly across the street. "Someone dropped off a packet for you. Looked like legal stuff. I think Eric saw it before I could grab it for you." Evelyn's breath caught. Legal packet. She rose from the bed, grabbed her coat, and opened the door to a cold, wind-cut evening. The lights in the main house were off, but she could see a faint flicker through the blinds. Somewhere in there, Eric now held something he wasn't supposed to read, and the countdown clock was still ticking. Evelyn texted Connolly back, "Leave it by your porch. I'll be there in 10. Then she stepped into the dark, her footsteps steady on the gravel path, unaware whether what was waiting for her was defense or betrayal. For a second, I thought I'd lost everything, and maybe I had once. The envelope was half open, its corner curling like a leaf, left too long in the sun. It sat atop the stack of Evelyn's mail, left carelessly on the edge of the guest house porch, delivered not by the postman, but by someone with hasty hands. Evelyn saw it the moment she returned from Mrs. Connolly's porch, still clutching the manila packet the neighbor had retrieved. But it wasn't the color or texture of the envelope that froze her. It was the logo stamped across the front, Oak Ridge Escrow and Title Confidential Disclosure. Her stomach dropped. She moved quickly, picking it up, scanning inside. The buyer's financial disclosure was there, full offer amount, wire verification, identity details, and just beneath it, a post-it note with handwriting she recognized. "So you're just selling it to some stranger. That's what we were to you, Eric." The world around her dimmed. Wind rustled the hedges. A distant dog barked, and Evelyn, for the first time in this whole quiet war, felt panic rise up like bile. She walked inside, shut the door, locked it. Her hand hovered over the deed folder, half wondering if she should rip it all up before it slipped completely out of her hands. But then a memory surfaced, clear and brutal. She was sitting in the garage 10 years earlier, weeping over an envelope from the bank. Eric's business had defaulted again. She and Mark had been on the verge of dipping into their retirement when he stopped her. "Kindness without boundaries," Mark had said, "becomes martyrdom, Evie. You can love someone and still say no." He'd kissed her forehead and slid the check back into the envelope. Next time, protect the house first. Now, here she was doing exactly that. Evelyn picked up the phone with a shaking hand and called Armin, the real estate agent. "Please tell me we're still on track," she said, skipping all pleasantries. He paused. She could hear keyboard clicks in the background. "We're still good," he said, voice calm. "The wire cleared, disclosures acknowledged. Buyer is still excited." Evelyn exhaled. But Armin added, "If anyone legally tied to the property files an emergency occupancy dispute before the move-out date, it could delay closing. Not cancel it, but stall it and raise red flags." She went quiet. "They haven't filed anything, have they?" he asked. "No," she said. "Not yet." She hung up and sat down at her desk, the same place where she'd first opened the deed. The air in the room felt different now, thicker, like it was waiting for a decision. Eric had seen the truth now, and truth once exposed had teeth. She picked up a pen and wrote a single sentence in her planner. "If they try to stop it, let them, but I won't stall my own freedom anymore." She underlined it twice. That night, the light in the main house stayed on long past midnight. Evelyn saw shadows moving through the living room, pacing. At one point, she thought she saw Eric looking out the window directly at her, but she didn't move. She just closed the blinds and bolted the door. The next morning, a voicemail waited from Armen. "Quick update. Buyer's still good, but just a heads up, the title company's watching occupancy timing closely now. No issues unless something gets contested before move-out day. We're in the final stretch. Just don't let anything stall the handoff." Evelyn looked out the window toward the main house. Final stretch, but the fight might not be over yet. They served guilt with wine. I brought documents. The table was set with intention burgundy napkins folded into delicate triangles, candles flickering low, and a bottle of red decanted, and breathing like the room itself was trying to relax her before it cut her. Jessica greeted Evelyn at the doorway with a hug that felt more choreographed than sincere. "I'm glad you came," she said, brushing invisible lint off Evelyn's coat. "Let's just have a nice talk tonight." Evelyn stepped inside without smiling. Her eyes drifted around the dining room, the same one where Mark had once carved the Thanksgiving turkey, while Eric held the mashed potato bowl like it was gold. Now the walls wore framed canvas quotes like, "Family is everything." The irony was so thick she could smell it over the rosemary chicken. Eric sat at the head of the table, shoulders tight beneath his dress shirt. Evelyn noted the unopened envelope resting at his elbow, her certified letter still sealed, still unread. Jessica poured the wine, her tone airy. "I figured we could be civil, just clear the air. Nobody wants tension during the holidays." "No," Evelyn said, settling into her seat. "That would be inconvenient." Plates were served. Toasts were made. Then the real meal began. "So," Eric said, finally breaking the surface tension, "we just want to understand. Why now?" Evelyn dabbed the corners of her mouth with a napkin. "Because you already moved me out." Jessica blinked. "What are you talking about? You've got your own space, your privacy." "You mean the structure behind the house I paid for?" Evelyn's voice was calm but unmovable. "The one you locked me out of after labeling my towels like I was a guest in my own name." Eric leaned forward. "You never said you weren't okay with it, and you never asked." Jessica's voice took on its well-rehearsed empathy. "We just want what's best for everyone. If there's been a misunderstanding, we can fix it. But reversing the sale, that hurts all of us." Evelyn took a slow sip of water, then reached into her bag. She pulled out a folder, placed it gently on the table like a final move in a long, quiet game of chess. "I thought this might help clarify things." She opened it. Inside, a yellowed but still pristine document. Lien agreement signed 2011 borrower Eric Thompson, secured against 427 Wisteria Lane, amount $48,000. Eric's signature was clear, bold, youthful. Jessica leaned in her face, draining of color. "What is this?" "Your down payment," Evelyn said. "You never repaid it, but Mark filed a lien just in case. I didn't even know he did until I found this a few months ago." Eric's mouth opened-closed. I didn't think that counted anymore." "It always counted," Evelyn replied. "You just never thought I'd enforce it." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It pulsed. Jessica stared at the papers, then back at Evelyn. "You're destroying your family," she spat, her voice rising with each syllable. Evelyn's hands were folded neatly in her lap. "No," she said. "I'm saving what's left of myself." Then she stood, tucked the folder back into her bag, and walked to the front door. She didn't look back. Behind her, she heard the unmistakable sound of paper hitting hardwood, the lien thrown in a fit Jessica couldn't suppress. But Evelyn kept walking. Back in the guest house, she unlocked her drawer and gently placed the folder inside. Then she sat down, her fingers trembling, but not from guilt, from freedom. Her phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Connolly. "You might want to check your porch. Someone dropped something off. Looked important." Evelyn rose, heart quickening, because she knew now each document was a door, and someone had just left another key. "They assumed I sold to investors. I sold to a woman who used to clean this block." Evelyn stood on the sidewalk, coat buttoned high against the wind, watching as the new homeowner stepped out of a silver sedan. The sun caught the woman's curls as she adjusted her sunglasses and stepped up to the front gate of what was now officially her home. She walked like she already belonged. Jessica stood on the porch, arms folded tight across her chest mouth, a flat line of disbelief. Eric hung back near the garage, pretending to scroll through his phone. "Hi," the woman said warmly, offering her hand first to Evelyn, then to no one else. "You must be Evelyn." Evelyn smiled. "I remember you." She did. 5 years ago, this woman had cleaned several houses on the block, hers included, back when Evelyn's knees could no longer keep up with scrubbing. Jessica had once hired her for a deep clean before a baby shower, then complained that she charged like she thought she was a designer. Never tipped her. "There's no mistake. The buyer said calmly, pulling a folded document from her bag. The title transfer, the closing confirmation, the LLC paperwork all signed, all sealed. Jessica's fingers twitched. I'm not sure you understand. This is our home. No. Evelyn cut in her voice, calm but firm. It was never yours. You just lived here while someone else paid the taxes. Eric finally looked up, guilt and exhaustion hollowing out his features. He didn't speak. The buyer turned to him, offering a gentle nod. I used to sweep your front porch every Tuesday. You never noticed. Evelyn stepped beside her. She has more respect for homes than you ever did. The silence was longer this time. Jessica's jaw tensed. Eric turned away completely. Inside the house had been cleared of their personal belongings, save for a few forgotten items, a cracked photo frame, a branded mug, an empty wine rack. The buyer, her name was Carla, walked the perimeter slowly, then paused in the living room, running her fingers along the windowsill Evelyn once painted herself. I used to dream of living on this block, Carla said quietly. Didn't think it would be here in this house. You earned it, Evelyn said. She meant it. Carla turned to her and handed her a small wicker basket. Inside were lemon muffins, a thank you card, and a pair of handcrafted keychains. This house will finally be loved, she said. Evelyn held the basket in both hands, stunned by the weight of kindness, something so rare in that house for so long. From behind them, a moving truck pulled up. Jessica gasped, loud and angry. They're early. This isn't over. Carla turned, smiled. Actually, it's just beginning. Evelyn stepped out of the doorway, letting the light in. The door closed softly behind them. They left me the guest house. I gave it to someone who needed shelter more. The walls had always been thin, but that morning, the silence inside the guest house was profound. No more arguments floating from the main house. No more coded passive-aggressive remarks tossed across the lawn like dry leaves. No more waiting for permission to breathe inside the property her hands helped build. Now Evelyn stood at the threshold of the guest house not as a forgotten parent, but as a decision-maker. She unlocked the door, stepped inside, and exhaled. The space was small. Yes, a kitchenette with chipped countertops, an old love seat with a sun-bleached armrest, and a twin bed tucked under a curtained window. But it was hers, legally and officially hers. And soon it wouldn't be. Martin had filed the paperwork months ago, long before Evelyn had even decided to reclaim the main house, a precaution he'd called it. She didn't realize it then, but that tiny action subdividing the parcel was the first domino. Now that the home had sold and the deal had closed, the guest house existed on its own lot with its own title, and Evelyn knew exactly what to do with it. She picked up the phone and dialed the number she had scribbled on a church bulletin a year ago. Haven Steps Shelter Network, the voice answered. Hi, she said. My name is Evelyn Rosenthal. I have a guest house. It's fully equipped and I want to donate it to someone who needs it more than I do. There was a pause on the other end, then a voice replied, stunned but steady. Are you serious? Evelyn smiled. Dead serious. 3 days later, a van pulled into the driveway, modest painted in soft blue with Haven Steps stenciled on the side. 2 women stepped out. One wore a clipboard, the other clutched a duffel bag and tried not to look anyone in the eye. Mia, 22. No family 1 year out of a trauma shelter, 2 months clean. She'd been couch hopping, working part-time at a diner too, afraid to dream about a place of her own. Evelyn greeted her with no fuss, just a gentle smile. I'm not offering charity, she said. I'm passing on what should have never been hoarded. Mia looked around the space, touching the edge of the bed, the clean towels stacked in the cabinet, the small lamp shaped like a tulip Evelyn had kept for years. And then she cried, not loud, just enough that Evelyn had to blink back her own tears too. No one's ever given me a key before, Mia whispered. Evelyn took her hand and wrapped Mia's fingers around the brass key with a blue ribbon tied to it. No one should feel unwanted in their own home, she said. That night, Evelyn made tea and sat outside on the steps of the now empty house she no longer needed. Your voice could change everything. Evelyn stared at the message, and for the first time in decades, she didn't feel small. She felt heard. They texted apologies. I mailed silence. The text came at 7:42 a.m., just as sunlight stretched across the kitchen floor of Evelyn's new condo, golden and clean. She hadn't changed the curtains yet. The boxes were still half unpacked. But peace, unlike furniture, didn't need assembly. She saw Eric's name light up her phone screen the way it used to when he needed money or wanted to vent about work. Mom, we didn't know we made you feel like this. Please, can we talk? Evelyn stared at the screen, thumb hovering. Then she hit lock, not because she was angry, because it was too late. That same morning, her inbox exploded. She paused before sealing it, wondering if she felt lighter. She didn't, but she felt right. Later that day, while sorting through an old keepsake box, Evelyn found a folded sheet of construction paper crinkled at the edges. On it was a drawing stick figure standing in front of a big yellow house with a blue sky and a crooked tree. At the bottom, written in a child's uneven scroll, "I love you, Grandma. You make everything feel safe." Lily, her granddaughter, just 6 when she drew it.